Recording in progress. I'm going to give this a few more minutes. Love that we are all joining early so we can get started right on time. In the meantime, I am going to share my screen. Nobody is allowed to judge how many tabs open I have, which is my only rule for today. And we have some things for us. Where is my presentation? Here we go. Alrighty then. Actually don't even have too many tabs open on this window. Okay. And we will get started in just a little bit. This is a great group. Excited to see so many people here.
Hi, everyone. I just want to quickly introduce myself. I'm Emily Collins. I'm JWI's Director of Financial Empowerment. I wanted to let you know, Steph, that, well, first of all, I'm really excited for this workshop. I will monitor the chat during the session. So if folks have questions, you want to type that in the chat. I will monitor the chat during the sessions, and I'll sort through the questions that are received, and at the end, be able to ask you those. So you don't have to worry too much about checking out the chat at the same time. Just wanted to give that heads up.
Perfect. That's super helpful. I actually also have spots for questions actually broken up throughout.
Awesome.
So there'll be lots of opportunities not only to ask questions during this, but to email me as well. My email is scattered throughout this presentation because I really am excited to keep in touch with y'all and to answer questions and to build this community. This is such an important intersection that I don't think gets enough airtime. So I'd love to keep this conversation going beyond just this presentation. So ask questions, introduce yourselves, say hi. And I think we can probably get started in a few minutes. Are there people still joining, Emily? Can you tell?
Great question. I am looking at we're steady at the participant number. I'm seeing we're recording, which is great. I think I know that there were a lot of people still in the main room when I joined. So I'd maybe give another 30 seconds and then get started.
Can do.
Awesome.
And my fiance Hannah Ruth is here in the room with me, going to try to keep my cats behaving as best as possible. So no promises if we wind up doing a little cat show and tell today. But we will do our best.
That's my absolute favorite, so no worries.
Not my favorite when they walk over the keyboard. I like to joke that they make good friends, bad coworkers.
Yes.
All right, shall we get started? So hi, everyone. Thank you again for being here. For those of you who are just joining, I'm Steph Black, and I have a women's studies degree from American University. I'm a writer. I've been published in the Progressive magazine, where I have a column, Ms. Magazine, Lilith, Rewire News Group, and a whole bunch more. You can find all that at stephblackstrategies.com, which you can see here. This is my email, so please email me. I'm currently the external communications manager for J Girls Magazine, among a few other different clients as well. I'm also a former JWI intern, which is actually really the place where I learned how to write and learned how to do a lot of this work. It's where I really got involved Jewishly in activism. In the first place, I actually learned that you could do activism Jewishly. So it's a really big honor for me to be here. I've been involved in JWI throughout the years in a lot of ways, but it really started with that internship. And I have done quite a few internships around domestic violence, but I'm really coming from the repro side of things. So if there's technical questions about IPV that I can't answer, I can definitely make sure that I connect you to the right people, but I can for sure answer any questions you have about abortion, reproductive justice, contraception access, and the political landscape around all of those things. So our agenda for today, I'm going to whip through sort of these first two bullet points, mainly because they're really good to have a consistent understanding and a consistent language to be talking about throughout this presentation. But as this will be available later, and I will make sure that this is available to all of us, and you'll be able to see all my speaker's notes where I have links and sources and more action items in the actual presenter notes. I'm going to try to just sort of fly through these first things, and there's time for questions at the end of this section too. We're going to be talking about what reproductive coercion is. It is a newer subsection of the IPV movement, so there's not a ton on it, and it's not super formalized as of now, but it's definitely getting there, and it's definitely becoming a more mainstream topic of conversation. And then we're going to talk about the intersection of abortion bans and reproductive coercion, which is the meat of what we're talking about today. So abortion, what is abortion? It felt really important to actually have a similar definition across the board, considering there's so much misinformation out there around abortion right now. A spontaneous abortion, as you probably have heard, is called a miscarriage. It happens naturally. Most people's first pregnancies end in miscarriage. And an elective abortion is the deliberate termination of a pregnancy. There's different methods of terminating a pregnancy, either procedural, surgical versus medication. A procedural is like a D&C, a D&E, things like that. Medication is when you take either just misoprostol or mifepristone and misoprostol to terminate a pregnancy. Typically when somebody is having a medication abortion, they will get the mifepristone at a clinic and then will pick up misoprostol to have at home, and they have their abortion at home. If somebody is self-managing their abortion, they're sourcing either just the misoprostol or both the misoprostol and mifepristone outside of the medical setting. And we'll talk about that more later. Real quick, there's no like late-term abortion procedure. You don't go into the hospital and they don't write late-term abortion on your chart. There's abortions that happen all through pregnancy, but this late-term abortion is actually what I would consider to be a dog whistle, an anti-choice dog whistle. So when I refer to pregnancies that happen in the third trimester, I say a third trimester, a third try, or an abortion later in pregnancy. Abortion is super common. I don't think people always understand how common it is and how pervasive abortion is, not only in this country, but worldwide. It is considered one of the essential healthcare services by the World Health Organization. There are 73 million induced abortions every year around the world. And 1 in 4 women in the US has had an abortion. This doesn't include non-binary people and trans people. 6 out of 10 of all unwanted pregnancies end in abortion, and 3 out of 10 all pregnancies, period, end in abortion, according to the World Health Organization. And another note, abortion is not in and of itself political. It is a medical procedure that people use to control their bodies and their futures. It has been politicized. And this is what we're seeing nowadays with the abortion bans that are happening and with the Supreme Court, recent Supreme Court cases. So just keep in mind that when we talk about abortion, something that has been politicized. I also want to share a definition of reproductive justice. This is the framework that I use when I talk about abortion, that I believe all abortion advocates should use. Reproductive justice is the right to have a child, to raise that child in a safe and healthy environment, and the right not to have a child. And so many things would fall under the category of reproductive justice, including anti-violence work. Sister Song is a collective of Black women. This was created by Black women. It's not just for Black women. And reproductive or justice orgs are grassroots organizations and led by people of color. And I just wanted to make a quick note that as a reproductive justice advocate, I'm not here to encourage abortions. I work with a lot of clinics. I'm the vice president of the Emma Goldman Clinic in Iowa. I've worked with local clinics here in DC. Nobody actually wants people to have abortions. We want people to be able to make the best decision for their bodies and their futures. And sometimes that includes abortion, and sometimes it doesn't. And we are trained to be able to help people work through what that looks like. But if an abortion is not the right choice for someone, we give referrals, we help counsel them, we connect them with other community agencies to help them have that child in a safe and healthy environment. So just a note on that. And now we're going to talk about bans versus restrictions. So these are two kinds of anti-choice measures that we're seeing right now. All of these definitions, by the way, come from the Center for Reproductive Rights. Bans are laws that make abortion illegal in a state, and restrictions restrict abortion, so they make it intentionally inaccessible. And there's actually a lot of kinds of bans. There are different kinds of abortion bans. Pre-Roe bans are bans that were on the books in a state before Roe v. Wade that either were never taken off the official record in case Roe was overturned, but they were essentially moot once Roe was passed, and now have the possibility of becoming enacted again and becoming enforced again now that Roe has ended. Trigger bans are laws that were passed at a state level to prevent abortion or restrict abortion or ban abortion after Roe was overturned. So there were trigger bans after 1973, like between 1973 when Roe was passed and today, in the hopes that Roe would be overturned. So we're seeing a lot of those be enacted. Pre-viability bans, this is important to mention because this was actually sort of the last stronghold of Roe. Roe was not really a really great protection of abortion access. One of the few things it did actually, though, that was important was it prevented any state from banning abortion before gestation. It's a very hard word for me to say, gestation, which means a state couldn't really ban abortion before like 24 or 22 weeks. Can you close that door? Thank you. I have a car alarm going off. And the case that overturned Roe v. Wade, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, was really going after this pre-viability ban. Method bans ban specific things like certain procedures, surgical procedures, such as D&Es. Reason bans ban abortion for things like abortion on the basis of the sex of the fetus or the race of the fetus, which actually is sort of a myth, again, sort of an anti-choice dog whistle. This doesn't really happen. Women and pregnant people don't choose to abort their fetus solely based on the sex or race of their fetus. Self-managed abortion is criminalized in some states explicitly. It's not very common. Only 6 states have explicit laws on the books, but this does prevent people from being able to source medical pills online, which is a very safe and effective way for people to access abortion medications. And then there are SB 8 copycats. So SB 8 was the law that was passed in Texas that basically made it okay for vigilantes to sue as private citizens people who provide abortion or help people get abortions. So it's another way that essentially bans abortion. Types of restrictions, these are trap laws, so targeted regulations of abortion providers. They basically just single out physicians and outpatient abortion clinics to make it impossible for those doctors to provide abortion there. So whether there's no second floor of the clinic or the hallways aren't wide enough for a gurney. No abortion clinics need gurneys. I don't know how many people are familiar with the inside of abortion clinics, but you never need a gurney in an abortion clinic. The kinds of light bulbs, how long the grass is outside. So they're really just laws to make it impossible and to raise, to force providers to spend all this money on making sure the regulations are there, what have you. Parental involvement require parents to be notified, either one or both, of the young person's abortion. They either have to get permission or, which is not always safe, as we know in the IPV world, it's not always safe for a young person to tell their parent that they are pregnant and want to have an abortion. They often require then that they do something called judicial bypass, which means that they have to go and petition a judge. So a minor basically has to petition a judge to ask to have an abortion. Consent laws, these you will know of as waiting periods are consent laws, biased counseling are consent laws, so requiring somebody to wait to come in on one day, hear a bunch of biased counseling, get a forced ultrasound, listen to the heartbeat, and then come back either 24 or 48 hours later, and then be met by the same doctor and then have the procedure is another way to just delay and discourage people from having abortions. It's all false information typically. It's not coming from the doctor, it's coming from a politician. And then the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment was passed in 1976 as a budget rider, and it's been voted on every single year by Congress since then. It prevents any sort of federal dollars to going towards abortion. So if you work for the federal government, if you are on Medicaid or Medicare, if you are in the military, for example, you can't use your insurance to cover the cost of an abortion. But there are also abortion protections. To end on a somewhat good note, there are two things that we can do on the state level to pass strong protections for abortion. The first is passing laws. So these are laws enacted by your state legislators that protect reproductive freedom, however that might be. Or there's a constitutional protection, which is a much stronger way of protecting abortion access, because despite who's in office, these constitutional protections are very, very hard to undo. They require a state constitutional amendment, which usually requires a vote of a certain, quantity, a certain percentage of voters have to vote to pass it. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to stop sharing. Is there anything here I can clarify whipping through that super fast? Feel free to ask in the chat, email me, unmute.
I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about, so you were talking about self-managed abortions, and I know that across state lines that can be tricky. So I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how people are accessing self-managed abortions, and then what can, what's kind of going on in the landscape that people are trying to stop people being able to access that across different state lines. How does that work? That does feel like the least centralized of abortion, yes, of abortion procedures or access.
Yes, and I think in some ways that's a good thing that it's the least centralized. Again, abortion is an option for people who live in places where abortion clinics, there aren't any abortion clinics, the clinics are inaccessible, or for whatever reason, they're not comfortable going to a clinic. That could be because they're undocumented, because they have a history of medical trauma, or for any number of reasons, cost also. Lots of people don't actually make it through the doors of an abortion clinic, so they choose to self-manage their abortion, which again, I've done the process myself. I haven't self-induced an abortion, but I've bought abortion pills online frequently because I was curious as to what the process was like. And it's very simple. It's like $150 depending on where you get it. And the only difference is that instead of going to a clinic to get the mifepristone, you're getting it sent in the mail. So it's very safe and very effective. There's no real issue with crossing state lines for self-managed abortion, I don't think. But it exists in a legal gray area. Now, legal doesn't always mean just. Legal doesn't always mean safe. We know this. Excuse me. So self-managing an abortion is a really good option for people who can't make it to a clinic. And it's not the right option for everyone either, but it's becoming more available and more accessible. And for anyone in a red state who can't access abortion right now, Red State Access is a new organization that's specifically helping people manage abortions. And plancpills.org is sort of the overall hub of where you can find tons of information relating to where to buy pills, to the process of self-managing abortion, getting support for self-managing an abortion, and other similar things.
Could you speak to the safety of the pill?
Yep, it's very safe. It's safer than giving birth. There's very few complications that happen. I don't know the exact statistic, but it's like a fraction of a percent of complications. And the thing with the medications is that you can go to a hospital and say that you're just having a miscarriage and they will treat you, because there's no way to test for those drugs in your blood, in your system. So if there are complications, usually it's just heavy bleeding, it's too much bleeding, or an incomplete abortion. So you still have the contents of pregnancy in the uterus. It's the same treatment for a miscarriage. So you go into a hospital, you say, I think I'm having a miscarriage, and they either help you with the profuse bleeding, or they give you a surgical abortion to complete the abortion. I'm going to start moving on to the next section, but if there are other questions, please ask them in the chat or wait till the end of the next section.
Awesome. Thank you. I did see someone put their hand up, so maybe if you want to, if you don't want to forget it, you can type it out, or if we do have a minute, maybe he could ask.
Right. So we are now going to move on to what actually is reproductive abuse and coercion. So this definition is from the National Network to End Domestic Violence. Like any other form of abuse, it's about power and control. So when a person tries to control somebody's reproductive choices in order to control their life, It's a single act or a larger pattern of behaviors. It can include rape, sexual assault, and any other sort of abusive actions concerning sexual and reproductive health. There are a few different kinds of behaviors that we see when looking at reproductive abuse. So the first are sex-related. There we are. So pressuring a person or forcing a person to have sex when they don't want to have sex can be a form of reproductive coercion. Threatening to end a relationship if a person doesn't have sex. Forcing a partner not to use birth control, including a condom, contraceptive pills, or other available options. Intentionally exposing a partner to an STI, or retaliating against a partner for a positive STI result. Contraception-related sabotage includes hiding, withholding, or destroying birth control pills or other forms of contraception. Tampering with birth control pills without the person's knowledge or consent. Breaking or poking holes in a condom. Removing a condom during sex without telling his or her partner, which is called stealthing. Refusing to withdraw during sex, even if that person previously agreed to. Pulling out a contraceptive ring, tearing off a contraceptive patch. And then pregnancy-related behaviors include getting pregnant when the other partner doesn't want to be pregnant, continuing a pregnancy when the person wants an abortion, or ending a pregnancy that is wanting to continue. And IPV advocates can assist in a few ways in their official role. They can either help do these things or help explain how the victim or their survivor can do these things. So how to buy birth control pills on your own instead of allowing a partner to do it, keeping birth control hidden and private, inspecting birth controls so they're the correct pills and they're not tampered with, inspecting condoms and wrappers to see if there are holes and tears, and switching to a permanent form of birth control that cannot be removed by a partner or any other sort of medical advised contraception. So anything that I can clarify there? I know there was a hand that I think I had seen. Good. Great. So we're now going to move into the intersection of abortion bans and reproductive coercion. As we all know, hopefully by day 3 of this conference, that violence is interconnected. Sexual violence leads to reproductive violence, can lead to physical violence, can lead to emotional violence, can lead to financial violence, and so on and so forth. Unplanned pregnancies, for example, increase the risk of domestic violence, and violence increases the risk for unplanned pregnancies. So these are, we can't address one without addressing the other. You can't address sexual violence or domestic violence without also including reproductive violence in your advocacy. So we're going to move into a little bit of an interactive part of this presentation. So I encourage everyone to enter in the chat the answers to their questions. There's, I think, 6 or 7 that we're going to go through, and then we're going to talk about each question afterwards. So in the chat, A, B, or C, how many pregnant women do you think are abused by their partner every year? So seeing a lot of C's, seeing a B, B. B's and C's. The correct answer is actually A. So it's 320,000, excuse me, pregnant women are abused by their partner each year. I do want to make a note here to say that this doesn't include transgender and non-binary people. Unfortunately, the data has not caught up with the reality that trans and non-binary people can be pregnant and can be abused. So I'm going to use binary language throughout this because that's what the data reflects, but I did just want to call attention to that. So 320,000 people, pregnant people, are abused by their partners each year. And as a result of that, they can develop up to a 37% higher risk of obstetric complications. So preeclampsia, going into labor early, I can't think of the word for that, and other sorts of related complications to pregnancy. So in the chat again, how many women have become pregnant due to rape by an intimate partner in her lifetime? In the United States, I should clarify. So enter in the chat. Preterm birth, thank you. I see a lot of B's. A lot of A's, a lot of B's. The answer is actually 3 million. So 10.3 million women have had a partner who's tried to get them pregnant against their will or refused to wear a condom. And as a result, 3 million of those women have become pregnant due to rape by an intimate partner in her lifetime. Next question. Of the women who were raped by an intimate partner, what percent also experienced another form of reproductive coercion? So in the chat, I see C, a lot of C's. I have the answer to how many give birth coming up later, so hold on to that question. Seeing a lot of B's and C's. Give it another minute. Of the women who were raped by an intimate partner, 30% of them experienced a form of reproductive coercion by the same partner. I had notes on that. This comes from the CDC. Specifically, about 20% of those women reported that their partner had tried to get them pregnant when they did not want to, or stop them from using birth control. So we have true or false. The odds of a woman experiencing intimate partner violence rise by 10% with each pregnancy. Lots of truths. Give it another minute. And the answer is true. So with every pregnancy a woman has, her odds increase by 10% each time for experiencing intimate partner violence. And then what percent of survivors report their abusive partners limit their childbearing decisions? Seeing all sorts of answers. Thirty-four percent. 34% of survivors report their abusive partner has limited their childbearing decisions. What percentage of women terminate their pregnancies specifically because they are in an abusive relationship? Sorry for the range. I couldn't find a more specific number. Seeing a lot of A's. The answer is A. Between 6 and 22% of women terminate their pregnancies and report that it's because, because they're that is because they are in an abusive relationship. And so on that note, is there anything I can clarify about those statistics? With the, once again, gentle reminder that I'm coming from the abortion side of things and not necessarily the IPV side of things, but in the presenter's notes that you will all get, all of the sources are linked so you can go read the studies yourself. Not that I don't want to answer questions about them. I will do my best. So feel free to unmute or raise your hand or answer in the chat or email me.
Seeing a hand raised when unmute. Yeah, go for it.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Oh, we've heard some reports about lawyers and other professionals being targeted when they assist survivors to access reproductive care in jurisdictions where it's legal. So if you have somebody who is in Texas, or in Alabama, and they try to access abortion in Washington, then there's a concern that some prosecutor in Texas might investigate you, or there might be a civil suit instigated by a private citizen to try to enforce a statute, or the perpetrator who raped the survivor is suing to protect the baby or force the pregnancy. And so I've been a part of some conversations about responses to try to support professionals to provide that survivor-centered support, and also to support advocates who are communicating on, like on social media, and who may not be thinking carefully about whether or not those communications might be subpoenaed and used as part of an investigation. And all of that seems like it's happening very fast. It's like one day it wasn't really a concern and the next day it was. So I'm wondering if are there organized conversations about, responding and providing support to remedy those problems? And if you could share a little bit about that, if there have been.
Yes. So I will start off by saying nothing has happened yet. There have been no formal lawsuits. Nobody has been criminalized yet for helping a patient access an abortion in a state where it's legal. I also do practical support. I'm an abortion activist. So I drive patients around DC who are traveling from places where abortion is illegal to clinics in DC. So this is something that I care about on a very personal level. I worry about state lines and whether or not that will be a federal crime. So as of right now, there has not been a formal charge for aiding and abetting abortion care, and it is a concern. There are tons of conversations happening within the abortion coalition, mostly for talking about the abortion activists. So either people doing practical support, abortion funds, and clinics who are seeing patients from out of state. If/when/how is sort of the legal organization. I really encourage everyone here to check them out if you have specific concerns, because they can answer the legal things. They have a warm line, so you can call, leave a message, and they'll connect you with a lawyer from your state to talk through some of the legal questions you might have. And there was something else I was going to say. That's the conversations are not quite yet about like larger advocates, like the second group of people. Like if somebody drives it, it's not, oh, I was going to talk about sanctuary laws. One of the ways that states where abortion is legal are mitigating some of these potential civil suits or investigations that might be happening are by passing laws that explicitly say, and DC is one of them, that they will not aid in an investigation of a pregnant person who goes to that state for an abortion. So Connecticut did, I think Rhode Island's up there, California maybe, and it's all moving very fast. And it's hard to tell the state of these things, especially with the election coming up. So I encourage everyone to go to centerforreproductiverights.org and looking up your state to see what laws are on the books, whether they be good laws or bad laws. And encourage your state, if abortion is still legal in your state, to become a sanctuary state and to pass protections for people who might be traveling, maybe for really great distances too, to access care in your state. But that was a great question. All right. On that note, I have just a few more points I want to share. And then there will be time for even more questions. I went faster than I thought I was through that beginning part, so we'll have lots of room for discussion here. So I just want to make a note that as we know, reproductive autonomy is essential for IPV survivors. In fact, a lot of the abuse stems from lack of autonomy. So restoring autonomy is critical. For example, if somebody is abused and it results in pregnancy, a victim may choose to stay with their partner if they are the only means of their financial support, and if they are not able to access an abortion. The lack of reproductive autonomy further tethers victims to their abusers. It makes it even harder than it already is to leave an abusive relationship. An abortion.
Speaking.
What was that?
Oh, hi. Hi, Ismail. How are you?
Sorry about that.
If someone who's a co-host, my teammates, if anyone's a co-host, if you could, oh, it's muted. Great. Sorry about that. Thank you.
All good. Abortion bans directly then affect the safety, health, and well-being of IPV survivors. There cannot be true justice for survivors of violence without abortion bans, or without access to abortion. And abortion bans and restrictions impede that. So these are a bunch of ways that IPV advocates, like the ones in this very Zoom room, can do to get involved with Repro, to protect abortion access, and to continue this conversation that we're having today. Sharing your why. Storytelling, I'm a writer, so I'm a little biased when it comes to this, but I really believe that sharing your story is one of the most important things we can do. Whether you have had an abortion, whether you're speaking as somebody who helps victims get abortions, whether you see women who have suffered from reproductive coercion, sharing your story is critical. In the Repro movement, you know, Renee Bracey Sherman, I use her as an example pretty frequently. She's the founder of We Testify, which is an organization solely about storytelling and abortion storytelling and connecting people who've had abortions who share their stories to testify, to speak at rallies, to talk to their communities, to organize. And because of that abortion storytelling, which has been dismissed, had previously been dismissed, we've actually moved the needle. We've done a lot of destigmatizing. We've done a lot of normalization of abortion because of storytelling. So whether you write an op-ed, whether you submit commentary, whether you speak at an abortion rally, or testify, your words matter, and your experiences doing this work as an IPV advocate matters, and your perspective matters. And I'm sure many of us here already do this, but lobbying for abortion is critical. I know we're probably experienced lobbyists in this room and have experienced calling your elected officials and sending emails, but doing so with your IPV hat on for abortion access only strengthens the Repro movement, which will only then strengthen protections for survivors. Another way is actually getting involved with your local orgs. If you're really inspired and you actually want to go out and do things on the front lines, there are many things that I think I sort of tailored this list to who I thought was going to be in this room, which includes volunteering on a talk line. Abortion is a hard decision for some people, and there are a few talk lines that people can call to help hold space for them, including All Options. And again, all of these will be linked in the presenter's notes. Exhale Pro Voice is another one, and there's also Faith Aloud, which is a faith-based talk line. There's also abortion funds. So you can either be a case manager or you can do other forms of volunteering, even just connecting your organization with an abortion fund to make sure that you have good referrals. You can find that at abortionfunds.org. Like I mentioned, I do practical support. So if you are interested in driving patients, providing childcare for people traveling out of town, or even housing, you can go to apiaryps.org to find your local practical support collective. This is for legal and states where abortion is not legal. And you can get involved with independent abortion clinics. So independent clinics are different than like Planned Parenthood, for example, because they are not a chain, they're not corporate. Independent clinics are able to really tailor their services and support to the needs of the community in ways that it's just not always feasible for a Planned Parenthood or a Whole Women's Health to be able to. So most abortions take place, I think 65% of all abortions take place at an independent clinic. So it's really imperative that we support them. So getting involved and seeing how you could volunteer with your local clinic. And then making sure that your organization supports access to reproductive health. Do you have a working relationship with your local abortion fund? Do you know which clinics you can refer to patients to for reproductive care? And then also learning how to support somebody having an abortion. So I linked a worksheet and things you can do to hold space for someone, including things to say, things not to say, how to show up for them. And then you can also learn how to support people who are unsure about what they want to do in their pregnancy. There's a really great workshop that I did. There's an online and a live one now. It's all via Zoom, but like there's like a Zoom class, and then there's a self-paced online course called the Pregnancy Options Workshop. It's really wonderful. I highly recommend it. And then any other ways that you can think to get involved are good and helpful. Sharing on social media, talking with people in your family, things like that are really great avenues to get involved. And with that, any questions on this particular chunk or any questions overall?
Well, this isn't a question, but just something that I wanted to say was that I really appreciated how you discussed gender and data about halfway through. I think trans and non-binary folks are really often left out of the conversation around abortion and pregnancy, and our data is limited. So I really appreciated you naming that we can cite this data while still acknowledging that our language and like surveys and data are often really limited and need to be more inclusive so that we can actually accurately represent the world around us. So I just appreciated you being able to hold that nuance there.
Definitely. I am actually going to put in a piece I wrote in one of my columns about there's two things I'm going to link. One is about why queer people should care about abortion access, and then how to talk about abortion access in a gender neutral way, which I think might be useful on that front.
Absolutely. And I'm about to share your website as well in the chat. Yeah. I see a question in the chat from Deb Fink, which says, can you say more about what local clinics can do or how they do it that's different from Planned Parenthood?
Mm-hmm. I won't go too high up on my soapbox here. Planned Parenthood serve a very important need in our community, and I don't want to discount that or the work they do. Planned Parenthood is a giant machine. They raise millions and millions and millions of dollars every day. Maybe not millions every day, but they raise incredible amounts of money, and they don't need your donations. That's a tough thing to say. Independent clinics do the bulk of the abortion providing in this country, which includes not only providing abortions, but hormone affirming therapy, contraception, STI testing. Our Emma Goldman clinic that I work with, has done hair removal services, right? Like it's also what we're thinking of if abortion ever becomes illegal in Iowa. What are the other non-abortion services we can apply? And because they're run just by the executive director who works in that specific clinic, there's significantly less red tape needed to go through in order to provide the best care possible. It's just less bureaucracy, I think. And oftentimes, what we see in the movement, as somebody who's in the repro movement, Planned Parenthood actually does routinely turn people down for not being able to cover the cost of their abortion. And some affiliates can be hard to work with on that front. Whereas that is typically never really the case with an independent clinic. Broad generalizations here, but indie clinics have a much easier time working with abortion funds and patients to set up payment plans, to set up different forms of payment, to do cash drop-offs from abortion funds. So I have found in my work and the work of from other people in this movement that when possible, it's always better to give your money to indie clinics who can really tailor their care to their community needs and who can provide the best possible care to their community. So thank you for that question. It's a good one. It's a lot of nuance. We have like 4 minutes left. If there are no more questions and you all have my emails, I have one more thing that we can share in the chat. Oops, these are the articles that I shared. Let me go back to present. So just as we leave and as we wrap up this session, if you want to add in the chat, one or all, what is one thing that surprised you? What is your aha moment? And what is one thing or multiple things that you will bring back to your organization? One thing that surprised you, your aha moment, and one thing you will bring with you. And again, please reach out. I'd love to work with you. I also run workshops on how to write op-eds. I'm going to be starting to offer those online. So please make sure you follow me or send an email if that's something that might interest you on how to write an op-ed about your work, either with IPV or another social cause. I'd be thrilled to read them. And this is where you can stay in touch with not only my website and my email, but all of my things. So if you want to follow me on social or subscribe to my newsletters and read more of my writing, you can hold your phone camera up to this and it'll take you to my link tree where you can find all of those good things.
This has been amazing. We did get a great question in the chat. So from Naomi Tucker, which says, can you speak to what education is being done on IPV with clinics so they can recognize and identify pregnancy coercion and other forms of DV and work with us?
Yes, I can speak to the clinics that I work with, but I know that this is definitely more of a universal trend as well. In bathrooms, like we might see in synagogues, we actually have tearaway flyers that not only say, are you a victim of domestic violence? We actually give resources in bathrooms, which are private. Every abortion patient in most of the clinics I've heard of have a private consultation without the people who accompany them. So they have a moment to ask about those things. And often providers specifically ask, are you making this decision of your own free will? Is this something you want to do? And if the answer is no, sometimes an abortion doula gets involved. Sometimes the provider does some like pregnancy options conversations. And if it is revealed that the person is a victim of domestic violence, they are referred. So there's lots of work that gets done in clinics. And that said, I'm sure it could be better. I'm sure having advocates have strong relationships with local clinics can only make it better for survivors. So if you are interested in knowing what your local clinic does, I encourage you to reach out from your, IPV advocacy side of things.
This has been such an amazing session. Truly, I am just in awe and so appreciative of just all of the nuance that you brought to this conversation. So much like extremely valuable information, I think, that we'll all take with us. And it was really great to read some of the responses in the chat as well. We are at, for me, on a Mountain Time, so we are at 10:59, so 59 or wherever, the last minute, wherever you are. So we're going to head back to the main room, but really just wanted to thank you so much. This was such a powerful session, and I'm so happy that I got to be here for it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you all being here and being present and asking good questions. Please be in touch and please fill out the feedback survey. I would love to be able to continue to run this session for other people. So the more feedback you can give me, good and bad, the good, bad, the ugly, please feel free to. It would be very valuable to me to do this going forward.
Just to clarify, is this your own survey or is this like the larger JWI evaluation survey that we're sending out? And we have we're getting feedback for each session?
Yeah, if I actually don't even know if I have access to that, but
We can get you that information. Like once the conference is over,
Okay.
Ariella can definitely get you that feedback. I just didn't know if there was like an additional one that you want folks to fill out.
Nope.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for plugging that. Absolutely. All right.
course.
Thank you all so much. This was a really, really important and valuable session. So thank you all. And we are going to be brought back to the main room, or maybe invited back. I'm going to have to click. But we'll be brought back to the main room in a minute. Thank you so much, Steph, for your time.